Welcome to the Current Faith podcast. I'm your host, Mark Buxton, and I have a question for really all of us today. Will there be a time in the near future where airline travel is no longer a safe option? Will there be a time where flying on a plane is no longer safe? The reason I've been thinking about this is because I've been watching the degradation of society that all the rest of us have been watching. Everyone out there has been watching. And my theory goes like this. There are really two things that undergird a nation and allow that nation the ability to realize culture-altering achievements. Think about the creation of the computer, or the creation of the airplane, the creation of electricity, the creation of the automobile. All of these things that are just completely earth-shaking, world-changing, culture-altering achievements. There's two things that undergird a nation that enable them to do that. The first is morality, a certain set of moral values, a moral compass, if you will, that guides the individual citizens day to day, but guides the nation as a whole in policy and how they vote and the direction the nation goes. That's the first thing, morality. The second thing is education. What sort of level of education are these people attaining? What sort of heights of education are they achieving? And I don't think it's an accident that the West has really historically been the leader in this for the last several hundred years. No nation is perfect, no person is perfect, but as a whole, you could look at the Western world and say the West has historically, overall, had a higher standard of morality as a general understanding and a higher standard of education as a general principle than anywhere else on the planet. And I think that's because of the Judeo-Christian heritage of the West, and I think it's because Western governments, and the United States in particular, were largely based on principles that we can find in the Scripture. So in thinking about that, I've been watching what's going on in the world, and I've read some interesting articles recently. First, thinking about moral decay, and this is what got me thinking about airlines and airplane travel. I've got an article here from fortune.com, and I will link that below so you can read it as well. But this article is titled "Fake Components Went into 68 Jet Engines." And the article says, CFM International Incorporated says 68 jet engines were fitted with spare parts backed by fraudulent documentation from a little-known UK-based supplier, a sign that fake components may have been installed on certain older model aircraft. The finding was included in a lawsuit by the joint venture of General Electric and Safran SA in the UK against closely held AOG Technics Limited. That's the corporation, AOG, according to a statement from CFM. CFM is a manufacturer of some of these parts. The suit seeks an injunction to force AOG to provide more information. The article goes on and says, the development provides the first hint at how many older generation Airbus A320 and Boeing 737 aircraft may have been fitted with spare parts that London-based AOG allegedly sold with falsified airworthiness records. It's unclear whether additional engines may have used unauthorized replacement parts. The proliferation of undocumented parts has sent shockwaves through an industry where every component requires verification to ensure aircraft safety. Without such assurance, it's impossible to know how durable uncertified parts will be under stress. And the article goes on to talk about this problem. What happened? People lied because they didn't have the moral underpinning, whether that was the employees on the line, or it sounds like probably their bosses, their supervisors, falsifying documents so that they could sell these parts and put them into Boeing and Airbus planes. That's a loss of morality. It's a loss of ethics and doing the right thing. The funny thing is, I read this article while I was in the air flying on an Airbus plane. And I'm thinking, oh great, this is really wonderful article that, to pull up on my laptop while I'm flying at 35,000 feet in the air. So that's just one example. But we could find more examples like that of normal, everyday things that need to happen for airplanes to get built and be safe, and morality causing that not to be possible anymore. I also was reading an article the other day about education. This is from thehill.com, which is a conservative newspaper, but news organization, but very reputable. And the title of this article is "Oregon Just Dropped All Graduation Standards, Failing All of Its Students in the Name of Equity." What does that mean? The article goes on to talk about that, of course, historically, there were requirements for high school graduation. There were standards that had to be met. Required for high school graduation requirements were sensible, the article says. It included things like you had to read and comprehend a variety of text, write clearly and accurately, and apply mathematics in a variety of settings. Students were required to demonstrate these skills by earning at or above a cut score on the Oregon statewide assessment test. Now, the school board has cited the effects of COVID-19 school closures. I wonder whose fault that was, but they're now blaming that on why they can no longer require students to meet those standards. Last month, Oregon State Board of Education voted unanimously to adopt an additional extension of the suspension of the standards. So Oregon is not requiring the students to achieve anything to graduate from high school. And so all these thousands of students are going to go out into the world, and some of them may go to college, some of them will try to find a job, some of them won't find a job or even try, but some of them will go on to college. Well, then what are the colleges going to have to do to accept these students? I imagine they're already talking about this, especially in the state school system of Oregon. They're going to have to lower their admission standards to accept all of these thousands of students that are coming online now. And then when those students try to work through 4 years of college, what's going to happen? The professors are going to have to babysit them, help them along, give them some leeway, and try to get them out of the door. And I understand this isn't happening in every state, but it's happening in a lot of places. I've seen other articles like this where the education standard is being lowered. So if we're living in a time where our moral standard is being lowered and our education standard is being lowered, that means that we may be coming to a time where we will not have any highly trained, qualified, honest, morally founded engineers to design and build aircraft. We may be coming to a time where we lose the ability to do that. Some of you know I live in a third world country in Southeast Asia, and this is not a knock on the third world, it's just reality, that third world countries do not have aerospace programs. Third world countries are not designing jumbo jets that people will pay money to fly on. Why? Because in the third world, largely, countries are characterized by corruption, a lack of morality, and low standards of education. Even though they try and they make efforts, across the board, the third world standards of education are not as high as in first world countries for a lot of reasons that we won't get into, but that's the reality. Low education standards and low morality standards. Third world countries cannot create jumbo jets. There's really only two countries or two areas of the world that create jumbo jets. That's the United States through Boeing and the European Union or the West through Airbus. There's a few smaller companies in Canada, Bombardier, I think it's called in Canada, and another one in Brazil, but no jumbo jet manufacturers outside of the United States and the EU. Why is that? Because historically, for a long time, there's been these two underpinnings in the West. There's an interesting theory that talks about this. I blogged about this before, and it's called the redemptive lift of the gospel, the redemptive lift of the Bible, if you will, in a society. And a secular sociologist studied the impact of missionaries on other countries. As missionaries went from Europe and the United States to other countries, he studied the impact of Christian missions. And this is what he said. His name was Robert Woodbury. Here's what he said. He hypothesizes the following. Quote, areas where Protestant missionaries had a significant presence in the past are on average more economically developed today, with comparatively better health, lower infant mortality, lower corruption, greater literacy, higher educational attainment, especially for women, and more robust membership in non-governmental associations or non-profit organizations doing good. That's the impact of the gospel. That's the impact of a Judeo-Christian set of values, the redemptive lift of biblical principles. This is why our Christian witness is so important. This is why our churches are so important. This is why I believe church planting is the most important work in the world. Not only are we changing people's eternal destiny, that's the most important, but we're at the same time, we're changing societies and the quality of life, if you will, for people around the world. The truth is, we will get the society that we allow. We can either allow moral decay and a lack of education, and we will get the society that comes along with that, and we will lose a lot of the technology that we enjoy today because there won't be anybody around who knows how to build it or has the drive to build it or the passion to build it or the ethics to build it, frankly. Or we can choose to come back to God and look to His wisdom and His knowledge and His foundational principles to guide us. So, is it possible that very soon we could live in a world where it's not safe to fly or have routine surgery, for example, or mail a package across the country or across the globe? I think that is possible if we continue to lose our moral underpinning and our educational level of achievement. I think we all need to pray that that doesn't happen, and we all need to work to see that that doesn't happen. It would be a brave new world to live in a place where there's not much advancement anymore. You can't trust anyone. And all the things that you've come to count on in your life begin to fall apart. that wouldn't be good for anybody. So on a positive note, I think we all need to pray that our churches and our pastors and our leaders can continue to lead us in a way that enables the gospel to go forward. And I think we all need to look to have a part in saturating our place where we are with the gospel so that we can continue to see that redemptive lift around the world. I'm Mark Buxton. That's our Current Faith podcast for this episode. Thanks for watching. I hope that makes you think, and I hope it encourages you.